it's getting closer, going faster than a roller coaster. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, 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 every day it's getting faster. Everyone said go ahead and ask her. Love like yours will surely come my way.
Welcome to this episode of Kingology. We're your hosts, Mark and Anthony. Today we'll be talking about Stephen King's third book in the Different Seasons collection, which is The Body, also made into a film in 1986, Stand By Me. Hi, Anthony.
Hey, Mark. Glad to be back. Thanks.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. So I think we'll discuss the book first. It seems appropriate. Now, I'm trying to remember I can't remember the tagline for this in the collection. It's an all fall something. It was about a fall.
The Fall from Innocence.
Yes, I believe that was it. Yes, yeah, that's right. So we've already dealt with the spring, which was Shawshank Redemption, and summer, which is that Pupil. So now we're into fall. This story, I think we can kind of just go through the elements of the story as we go. I'll assume that people have either read this or seen this, and if not, we're going to have spoilers, I think, throughout this entire podcast.
Yeah, well, it's nearly a 30-year-old film.
Yeah,
and, the stories. Yeah, I should note it's amazing how true King holds to the promise of those seasons. You know, this one is Fall from Innocence, and what you get is kind of a coming-of-age story.
Yeah, a passage. It's almost a quest story. It reminded me somewhat, four characters going on a journey, somewhat the structure of The Stand, the second half of The Stand, which again I think was inspired. Well, it's even referenced directly in The Stand by Lord of the Rings. Yeah, the Fellowship of the Ring. Certainly the four hobbits in that.
Yeah, it's just the simplest thing. You have this goal of a journey, and that becomes the scaffolding to look at all other kinds of issues and themes. It's really great.
It certainly is. I mean, if it concerns really four characters, four boys. Chris and Gordy are the significant ones, pair, but they're also accompanied by Vern and Teddy. And also, it made me think a lot of this book. It felt like a precursor, almost like a test run for It, in some ways, because many of the themes were covered in It. Probably more deeply in It, actually. Though I think this is a very nice piece of work all on its own. It's a really nice analysis of sort of childhood and sort of that passing from childhood to adulthood, that sort of early stage in puberty where you're kind of hitting that kind of stride.
Very strong with all the King-isms, the King tropes, the band of children, the bullying, the one child as a writer character. There's so much in there that is really the King's style. It's not so much that he, I heard a quote recently that when an author repeats himself, that's he's not copying himself, it's a style. And
it's his style, yeah.
You definitely see that King style very established in this story.
Indeed, and there are certain other elements. I'm trying to think of some other elements. This is certainly the bullying, and also sort of sometimes the ineffectuality or effectuality of adults around bullying. And again, King gets us really into the mindset of some of these characters, particularly Gordy, and he's dealing with his parents. He's kind of a lonely child, and it's written very nicely. Again, how King does this, I've no idea. I don't believe this was from his own personal experience, but I think it was possibly observing other children or remembering other children from his childhood, maybe. I'm not quite sure. The only character that really strongly reminds me of anyone from It, having said, the parallels, I think, probably Teddy really reminds me of Richie from It. Richie's not as crazy, he's more of a fun-loving kind of guy, but the sort of general daringness is kind of there. But,
yes.
But otherwise they feel fairly distinct. I mean, Gordy, perhaps. I'm trying to remember some of the other characters for me. It's been a while since I've read it. Perhaps, but maybe reflecting on it is diminishing this story somewhat, and it doesn't deserve to be diminished. So I'll stop that analogy there, I think. Now, first, it's it kind of Goldie and Chris are obviously deeply. There's a deep friendship between them, and it's Goldie knows a lot about Chris, and Chris knows a lot about Goldie. I like the stories, for example, of Goldie tells how Chris is trying to avoid drinking at all because he sees what it does to the rest of his family, and how he refused to get sucked into it. Which again is a reflection about alcoholism, which is another King trope. King was an alcoholic in his time, so there's that reflection. So there's those elements too.
All these kids come from dysfunctional homes. All of them are kind of screwed up in some way. Gordy may not have the abuse going on in his household, but he's got parents that are just really in their own world, distraught with the loss of his older brother, and he describes himself as the invisible child. So he's like the invisible man. And so what you were saying before about these two being close, they're really finding in each other what they're lacking from parents or others that would really know them and understand each other's needs.
Indeed.
So,
yeah. I mean, as you say, he's the invisible boy. Goldie talks about his parents just looking straight through him, and in fact, one of the few interactions we get in the book between Goldie and one of his parents is his dad commenting that his friends are two thieves and a thief.
Yes,
and that was his comment. And even then, he's kind of, there's no passion or venom in it. It's just he can't. The dad comes across as a tired, run down individual. So you can kind of, but of course, this is from Goldie's eyes as the invisible boy. Mm.
Well, you see how destructive it is, just indifference. He had parents that were gushing and just really inordinately interested in all the goings-on of his older brother. Denny was the name, played by John Cusack in the film.
Indeed.
And, he was the invisible boy. And so you see how just the neglect and the absence of, the attaboys and just whatever type of attention a parent ought to be giving his son, just how hurtful that is to him.
Indeed. And it's kind of almost doubly tragic because there's in the story, there's quite a lengthy talk about his parents believed they would never have any children because of his mother was miscarrying and such forth. And when Denny came along, that was the doctor said, well, it's a gift from God. So they weren't expecting any more children after that. So when Gordy comes along, that was a double surprise. But it seems like they only had enough in it to sort of love one son, it seems. Which seems doubly tragic, as I say, after being desperate for a child for so long, that they can't extend it to two.
Yeah, and it was this weird dynamic where they would remind him, tell him those stories about how, it was against all odds that he was born, but there was this attitude, almost like they had done him this big favor by bringing him into the world, and yet he doesn't get the attention of his brother, and he lives in that strange dynamic.
Yeah, and his brother is so much older than him. They don't even really. They just are the same people in a house. It's almost like his brother doesn't interact with him that much, from what's said. So when he talks about when his brother dies, when he cried, it wasn't really for himself or his brother. Even it was more for his parents. And I think he uses the phrase "fat lot good it did me or them."
Yes.
It's got a very sad tinge.
Yes.
In terms of plot, what happens next is we hear about Vern, who's been lost his pennies under his porch and trying to figure out where they're buried, and he's digging in various places trying to find them. And he happens to overhear his brother talking about the fact him and his friend found this dead kid who's been reported missing. And this is what drives the entire story, and how both the boys find out about it and Ace Merrill's gang find out about it. And Ace Merrill is the local punk, as it were, the bully. He's significantly older than these boys. He's got access to cars, and the gang have got access to cars, which comes towards the end, and how those guys interact with these boys comes towards the end of the story. Anyway, because they come from dysfunctional homes, they can actually pretty easily disappear for 2 days, and no one really know about it by pretending to be out camping.
That's right.
Teddy's an interesting character. He had this crazy father who did this terrible, terrible thing to him, burning his ears on a stove. But it doesn't matter. He still loves his father. It's bizarre that someone who so badly treated loves their parent, while Gouldy parents who never sort of laid a hand on him, just kind of, it's almost worse in a way.
Oh, that's a really good insight. I know the negative attention is better than no attention at all.
Yeah.
So Teddy is just fiercely protective of his father. If his father were to be criticized by someone, his father's war record as someone who stormed the beach of Normandy is just legend to Teddy.
Teddy loves war stories as well, because they help him reflect on his father and mythologize his father as such.
That's right.
And we get some insight then into the nature of Chris. Chris becomes basically almost the person that saves others. And that's in the story of where Teddy's extremely daring. He's constantly doing things like truck dodging and train dodging and things like this. And we get a little sort of snippet of their journey where Gouldy basically pulls him out from off of the train tracks to stop him train dodging. But then we hear a story about how Teddy climbed up this tree that everyone else was frightened to and stood on a rotten branch and fell, and Chris managed to catch him by his hair, even though, hurting himself, hurting his elbow, his wrist. But he saved Teddy, and even then Teddy sort of tried to attack him for pulling his hair.
Yes.
But Chris, saved him and hurt himself, and that seems to be Chris's nature in this story, even though he comes from effectively a rotten family, and he's treated like he's from a rotten family by everyone else.
He's right. He's a special kid. He's almost parental to these other boys that he's a peer to. And you see that he's someone. You see that he is unique, and he's got potential to overcome his circumstances.
Is ultimately another sign of I don't want to call him a saviour because that's way too strong, but the other side, another aspect of his nature is they talk about he's the best peacemaker. He doesn't want the conflict, he wants to resolve the conflict, and he does, and he's quite good at it.
Yes.
And then we get an aside in the book of which is the first, I think, published story by Gouldy as a grown-up, which is a story about a character called Chico. What did you think of this little aside?
That was an interesting little insert. At first it was, it's jarring, not in a bad way, but it's just this sudden, abrupt insertion of a story, and you get it pretty quickly that this is a piece of fiction by this writer. And as the story is told, we have some information that was told to us earlier where you recognize that he's working his experiences as a child and some of his fears into that earlier story. So he's referencing it for that reason. And by the time he's done, he tells us his feelings about that story and how it was one of his, product of his younger writer self.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. As I read the story, I thought this isn't very good, and I wasn't a fan of the story as such. But the insight is, he says himself, he knows it isn't very good, but it feels close to him because it's his first sort of published work. It feels like something that sprung from him wholly, which is an interesting insight. And it's kind of interesting. King chose to put this in. I'm guessing it was a story King himself wrote, and it sort of reflected in this, or something like it, and he just modified it for this. I do find it a bit jarring because it does it's quite a wild departure from the tone of the rest of the story, and it could have been removed, and I don't think it would have hurt the story at all.
It didn't have to be in there, or at least not to that extent. I mean, it's not a problem, but it surprised me how long it went on, and I did want to return to the action.
Indeed. It's kind of interesting, again, King, or rather Gouldy as a writer, reflects on how it's, misogynistic and quite juvenile, and this and that. It is kind of jarring.
Yes.
Yeah, though. And then we get, I think, what's next in the story, one significant thing that happens is Chris shows the gun he's bought with him, and gives it to Gouldy, who... He tells him it's not loaded, but Gouldy then fires it, and they both freak out and run away, and that's kind of a funny bit. But Chris swears that he didn't know it was loaded, and there's no reason not to believe him. From the character we learn about him later on, that it seems like it wasn't a trick. It was genuinely didn't realise it was loaded, or there was one in the chamber, or whatever.
Right. Yeah, such a dangerous situation because, the kid being told it was empty could have turned it on him and, done bang, bang, playing, and the round goes off. So. Yeah.
And then the boys realise they've got no food, so they sort of try and stump up money. I always laugh that Vern only has 7 cents.
That's right. He hasn't found his pennies.
Yeah, that's right. These pennies that are legend that keep growing in his mind. How much is in the jar.
And meanwhile, the other kids they strongly suspect that the older brother knew all about the pennies and dug them up.
Yeah,
and
indeed.
Now this kid is just left, digging hole after hole over a period of months and months.
It is interesting that two of the boys, Vern and Chris, have semi-abusive older brothers, certainly older brothers that are happy to sort of slap them about and boss them around, and play tricks on them. And they're both in this Ace Merrill's gang as well. But they toss coins, which is they all toss a coin each, and the odd one is meant to go get the food, but they all turn up. Is it heads, or I can't remember if it's all heads or all tails, but they're all the same. And Vern gets really concerned because he calls it a goocher.
That's right.
Which is massive, massive bad luck.
That's right.
So, which comes back to haunt us later, certainly in the book, not so much the film, but certainly in the book. And they toss again, and Gouldy is the odd one this time, so he has to go get the food. So he goes to the shop, gets some hamburger and I think he gets some other few bits and bobs, like drinks. But he notes the shop owner starts talking about his brother, and then Gouldy, for a kid, it's quite bold that he says, "Can you take your thumb off the scales?" And then he complains about being overcharged, and he blows a fuse and sort of accuses the shopkeeper of trying to cheat a kid, which, just annoying a guy after just about as he's about to disappear for 2 days. And he seems like an intelligent kid, Gouldy, but I guess, he's a boy still, and he's obviously angry. I think he's more angry about the brother being mentioned. And the guy's going on about, he's all-star, all confident, whatever. He just talked about his brother, and it was a shame.
Yeah, it's all about the brother playing sports, and do you play sports? And was it football?
Indeed. So Gouldy goes back, and then they go through the scrapyard with Milo and Chopper. Now, how did you feel about this? I mean, they're teasing this guy's dog. Do you think Milo was a sort of tyrannical character? Was it just a guy working and trying to keep the kids out? What was your feelings about Milo and how certainly how Teddy interacted with him?
I'm trying to remember. I have the scene from the movie fresher in my head.
Yeah.
But what struck me was how they had built up not so much about Milo, but about the dog, how they had built up this legend about how, mean and nasty this dog was. And there's a reference to Cujo
there.
Yes. Which is interesting.
I think it said the baddest dog around here, well, until Cujo, X years later. Something like that, isn't it? Sorry, I'll cut you off there. Sorry. Go on.
Yeah, and but in the film, you see the dog is not there's not much to him, and they see the disparity between legend and reality right there.
No, they can't do this in the film, but in the book, Teddy is driving the dog really mad, so much so it's bloody in its nose as he's trying to run at the fence, which is pretty horrible. And Milo, to me, just seems some sort of working guy that they're just sort of, if you're a grown man and boys start sort of cussing you out, you're going to get pretty cross,
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't mean you're a tyrant.
Right, just the disrespect from these kids. And this is a case of kids. They're not such terrible kids, but they are troubled kids, and they're working things out and saying the wrong things to adults.
Indeed, but then Milo really recognises Teddy and starts talking about his loony father, and realising he's pushing his buttons, and so he keeps doing it and keeps doing it, which really enrages Teddy, and they have to kind of drag him off the fence and take him away. And Teddy, who sort of acts tough, once they're away, starts crying his eyes out, and they try and comfort him by sort of saying, "Do you believe that sack of shit was stormed the beach at Normandy? No, but your old man did." They're building up his father too, to sort of cheer him up and make him feel better, and it kind of works. It works. And Milo again threatens to tell their parents he recognises all of them, but they sort of Gordy makes the point. Oh yeah, so if you do that, we'll say that you sicked your dog onto a kid, in the public dump. But obviously the guy, it was locked, so they shouldn't have been there. So it was trespassing, even if it is a public dump. So anyway, that goes by the by. And I think we find out later in the book that he never does actually tell the parents. So Chris comforts Teddy, and again, Gordy then talks about how good Chris is at sort of making peace and settling the sort of arguments and sort of making people feel better and stuff around that. And I can't remember if it was here or a bit later in the book. There's a moment where Gordy sort of is on his own and he comes across a deer, which I'm not sure has any significance other than he talks about remembering it many years later. It's just one of those things you always remember. And they put that in the film. It doesn't serve any particular purpose other than give you a feeling of isolation and sort of solitude, and probably the fact you're in the woods, something like that.
Yeah, in both the book and the movie, it's just this moment that Gordy has, and he's about to tell his friends about it, but he decides that it's a memory he just wants to keep for himself.
Yeah, that was the point, wasn't it? Yes, it was to have his own memory of it. And then I think they camp out and they're sort of starting to cook, and Vern starts talking about how he's a bit worried that when he sees the body, he's going to give him nightmares. He talks about vampire comic books giving him nightmares, and he talks about a nightmare where he sees a hanging man in a house, which kind of remind me of Salem's Lot.
Yeah, with Barlow.
Yeah, and again, King kind of referencing his own sort of possibly personal demons or memories.
Yeah, I mean Marsden in the.
It's Marsden, isn't it? Marsden, yes, yes. So it kind of reminded me of that. I don't know if it was specifically a reference to an oblique reference to that, or just a coincidence.
There's some notes I'm looking at on a certain site, and they talk about Salem's Lot as reference when the boys first listened to Gordy's story about the
that's probably it then.
pie eating contest.
Yeah, because that's just before the pie eating contest. And then that's when Gordy tells the Lardass story, which is kind of a fun story. I thought it was a great story, and I'm never quite sure how to take the reaction of the boys to say, yeah, but that was a bad ending. What happened next? It's like, oh, that was a great story. It was a perfect story. What are they talking about? But they're boys. They want like. Kids, sometimes kids want stories to just keep going. But to me, it was a good story. And I didn't quite understand the reaction of Vernon.
Yeah, it probably just captures that frustration when you do write something and part of your audience might be too literal or too something, and they just have a hang up about, something they shouldn't be hung up about.
I think King puts in there to make a point, because he either just before or just after starts talking about how writing can be a sort of shameful act that you're kind of embarrassed about, and he likens it certainly writing for yourself as kind of a masturbation act, not in only in the sense it's something that you kind of do shamefully because you're a bit embarrassed about showing it to anyone, kind of thing.
Right.
But he makes an interesting point about now he's older and he's a professional writer. It's more, not so much masturbation as artificial insemination, which kind of made me laugh. Actually, that's kind of an interesting insight. I do like the Lardass story though. And then we get to they have their hamburgers, and I do laugh when they get out the cigarettes and says, "There's nothing like a smoke after a good meal," and it's kind of
they're just these men of the world.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. But then we get where Chris and Gordy are walking separate from. I think Vern and Teddy have gone on ahead, and he talks about how he wishes he was Chris's father, because I think Gordy starts talking about doing shop classes instead of the sort of more academic classes, so he can be with his friends. And he says, no man, your friends drag you down. And he even says, I wish I was your father, I'd kick your ass and make sure you did the right courses. Again, it's Chris being a saver of someone else,
That's right. Very, very accurately adapted into the film.
Indeed, a really good scene in the film.
Yeah,
really
very good. And so he's, so he is really counseling him like a parent would. Yet the thing is that Gordy has this like self-esteem problem, and he doesn't know that he's any good on any level because he lacks that approbation of his father.
Yes, indeed.
And but he needs Chris in his life to tell him these things. Yes,
and you do feel that he became a writer because Chris was there, not because
that's right.
Not off of his own back necessarily, because that was the only encouragement he's got. Without that encouragement, he wouldn't have been a writer. He'd have been a schlub down the mill. Kind of. Yeah,
and there's that reciprocal thing for Chris, because Chris is, is he just cut from the same bad cloth as his older brother and family, and he needs, someone to help him rise above those thoughts.
Indeed, and at that point also Chris talks about stealing the milk money, and the fact he tried to give it back, and who's going to believe him, and all that, basically you realise how much is set against this boy. How much
he returns the money, and the teacher plays like it was still stolen by him, and she spends the money.
And we also get some insight into his family life. Talks about him having to spend days off. Go to the hospital and get bones reset, and it sounds awful. It's just awful.
Yes.
And then I think we get to the part where they go. Now, in the film, it's like that's their only way there. But I think in the book, it's just they decide to go swimming because it's so hot. But I could have that wrong. But eventually, effectively, they get leeches all over them and have to pull them off. And we get I think, King's EC moment in this story where giant blood-filled leeches are hanging off him, and poor old Gordy gets one on his testicles, and when he pulls it off, it it explodes with a pop full of blood, and it's kind of disgusting.
Yeah, this is King's. King says he's not above going for the gross out moment, and this is one of them.
Puts one in. Yes, and it's done really quite well. Again, obviously not very graphically in the film, but it's done quite well.
Yeah, because we all know, the King hierarchy. There's terror, the purest emotion, and then horror, and then there's just the gross out.
Indeed. And if anyone's not familiar with King's levels of horror, I encourage you to read Dance Macabre. It's laid out really nicely in that book. And then once after the section with the leeches, we get a slight diversion again where Gordy talks about the Goocher. He comes back to the Goocher and the fact that, it was bad luck, and notes that for the three other boys all died early, and he was the one that survived. It's kind of almost like this journey was an early trial, sort of an echo of a future life.
It was a portent or oracle of something.
Yeah. And then at that point they realise that the body's way further than they thought. As the crow flies, it's fairly direct, but they've got to take a longer way around, and they have to just learn sort of really pick their feet up and keep going. Actually, I didn't talk about the bridge crossing, did I?
No.
Earlier on, they're crossing a bridge with a train bridge, thinking no train will come, but one does, and the bridge is way too high to jump off of, so they have to sort of outrun the train. Certainly, it's Vern and Gordy. I think Teddy and Chris are already there, which is done really well in the film, actually. In terms of building the tension and stuff, it looked. There was a lot of, I think, rear projection and compositing going on. It reminded me of some of Hitchcock's work in the film, where that train scene. Trying to make it look real, but I'm sure there was rear projection going across real sets towards the front.
I'm not so sure. The way it was filmed, it may have just looked dangerous. Sometimes in camera, you can have things look closer than they are, and it may have been a very controlled thing. Maybe they were on a platform that was
a side platform, perhaps. I wasn't sure.
Something. It didn't strike me as like any kind of rear projection going on.
It's a rear projection. I don't think it was rear projection. Although I said it, I think it was some sort of compositing, though, different images. I think. Some of it was definitely the train was right behind, looked like it was right behind them, and they were running, and there was definitely a real train there. But, you can use different lenses to give different perceptions of depth.
You can. And I wonder if this is like some kind of metaphor. It's just occurring to me now because, ultimately this is, their situation is that they're boys who have to escape their circumstances before it's too late, and here you find them trying to get across a bridge, and they got to make it across, and yet they're being pursued by this train. It's just kind of interesting.
I think there's certainly an element of that. I also think it may be, in effect, the point of no return, perhaps, as well. There may be an element of that. But I think your point is probably the stronger one of the two. And there's probably other sort of elements of that. It's the fact shared adversity forges friendships, isn't it? And being nearly run over by a train probably is a shared experience you're never going to forget.
Yeah, they have to help each other across. Mm-hmm.
And we get a kind of reflection of that earlier. I think I've already mentioned with Teddy doing considering doing train dodging and being dragged off from that. So they start to get nearer. I think I didn't mention this. When they were talking earlier, when Vern was talking about what scares him, and he doesn't want to be scared. There's actually the point raised that, well, maybe this shouldn't be fun. Maybe we're doing something serious. We're seeing a dead kid. This isn't just a fun few days out. And so that cements this idea they're going on some sort of special formative journey together.
That's right. Yeah,
which is kind of cool.
There's the adventure aspect and the camaraderie and fun and games that are happening along the way, but he has this moment of realization that there's a higher purpose here.
Yeah, I think they all kind of realise that, in fact. Mm-hmm. And as they get nearer to the body where they know it is, they a storm starts, a rainstorm starts, and as they get closer, the sort of I can't remember what point, but at a certain point it turns to hail. And at first they just see the hand of the boy, and they go look, and it's uncover it as such. And there's some quite interesting and fine writing about the fact that it's a hand, and then before they see that, it doesn't seem quite as real. And there's also a description of hail falling into the boy's face, and he's filling up his eyes, and which is
this was much more effectively rendered in the book. In the film, it doesn't bring across that type of imagery. It's so effective in the book.
It is very effective. It's a great piece of writing. But just then, I think there's, as these boys are going on their journey, we sometimes get diversions into Ace Merrill's gang as well. But essentially, the two boys that know about the body crack, tell the rest of the gang in separate ways. But eventually, the entire gang decide they're going to come out, take their fishing stuff, so it looks like they're going fishing, and pretend to have discovered the body and sort of be the heroes. So just as our four boys turn up, these hoodlums kind of turn up, and sort of Ace Merrill actually, is more reasonable than your average hoodlum. He says, "I'll give you a chance to turn around and walk away, or you can stay here. We'll beat the crap out of you, and then we'll claim the body."
Yeah, that's right.
It's the whole. What also made me laugh, and it's rung really true, was the fact they say, "No, we got dibs," and they explain, they can explain why they got dibs and stuff like that. And Ace Merrill argues with them about it on their terms. He's obviously not that much older than them, because he's like even sort of discussing dibs.
Well, the boys, they say that they earned it. They journeyed on foot to get there. Where these guys, they just piled into a car.
And at that point, in a difference from the film, Chris pulls the gun. Mm-hmm. And sort of threatens them, and Ace Merrill can kind of tell. And they really rank Ace Merrill in this, really, anyone that, if you talk like that to a punk like that, you're going to get hurt at some point.
That's right.
Certainly in front of his friends, the rest of his cronies. But he backs off, and they just, leave. And the boys talk about making a sort of, some sort of device to carry the kid out, but they decide, no, it's almost like the kids earn the right to be left in peace as well, and that they decide to just go back and sort of leave him alone. And they get back to town. It turns out Ace Merrill's gang making an anonymous call, and the body gets found out. But they take their, Chris takes his beating from his parents, and then from his brother, and Ace Merrill, and they all get hurt. Certainly, we hear about Gordy and Chris getting hurt quite badly by Ace Merrill, and an adult sort of breaking it up, which reminded me a lot of. There's a very similar scene in It, which involving a sort of cut. One of these hoodlums cutting one of the kids, and one of the adults seeing it, but turning around and walking away rather than intervening. Whereas in this book, an adult does intervene.
Yes,
it kind of reminded me of that. And then
we're spared this in the film, but it's pretty brutal in the book. I mean, he's got his nose, his fingers are broken, and they kick him in the testicles, and
there's all sorts. And then there's a part where again King's reflecting on writing, and he talks about some things words will just cheapen. It doesn't matter how good a writer you are, words will cheapen the reality of it. Which is King's way, I guess, of saying, even the best writer in the world can't actually make certain things seem real to you, which I don't actually believe. I think, and I'm not sure if King believes it, actually. There's always some element of that. But I think he
does, because I've heard him in more recent interviews talking about how there are times where he's feels like he's reaching the limits of what he can do to render whatever it is he's working on.
Yeah.
And he just stops and he says to himself, I just wish I was more talented. I wish I, could do what the vision he has for it. He's not achieving it.
Yeah. in fact, there's something in his. I've already mentioned Danse Macabre, and in the section where he's talking about terror, horror, and the gross out, where he says, one of the problems with trying to one day, once you get terror, once you open the door to show the monster, it never lives up to what someone's built up in their imagination. So you are always on a hide into nothing, but you basically got to keep trying. And this is kind of a version of words cheapening reality. I guess you can never be what someone can imagine. Once you concrete it up, it never quite lives up to expectation. But then he sort of suggests, well, sometimes you can do it. Very occasionally you can do it, and it's that attempting to do that keeps him going. And this is in an earlier work than this book, but it's kind of a similar point.
I think you're right. I think in that section of Danse Macabre, it's the part where he references William F. Nolan talking about this idea of showing the monster and how it relieves your fears about it. If there's a giant bug, is it 80 feet tall? Is it 8 feet tall? And when you open the door and it's 80 feet tall, you're relieved because it could have been 800 feet tall, whatever the numbers were. Yes. And he refers to Nolan. I love the quote. I put it on the book. I published a trilogy of stories by Nolan, and the quote I put on the book comes from Danse Macabre, calling Nolan a master of the art and science of scaring the hell out of people. I love that.
Nice. So overall, that sort of covers our story. It wasn't the longest in this book. I think our pupil was slightly longer, but it was a reasonable length. It's still a novella, I'd say. What's your overall thoughts on the quality and the story of this?
I love it. It has a lot of poignant things to say. It's very insightful about these relationships, the things that we were touching on earlier, the needs that people have, and these young boys in particular, given their family situations and how they were finding in each other what was lacking at home. And it's there are elements of a love story there too, in that sense.
Yeah.
We see a bit of that there's a touch of that in Tommyknockers. I know you weren't a fan of that book, but toward the end, and there's some of that in Cujo, where King, he seems to be interested in that formative time where kids are figuring out what they're going to become. And in Cujo, there's that bit about the mother of the shop owner, where she takes her son to Boston.
Yeah.
Because she wants the kid to have other models in his life besides, his slovenly father.
Who's kind of brutal. It's not brutal. What would you call him? He is a bit brutal, but he's basically fairly coarse and. He just was. Just the different model of what a man can be. She wanted her kid to see that, but those themes of boys becoming men and their trajectory, and it's really beautiful stuff in King's hands, and you have that here in a very effective way. Yeah, indeed. I haven't actually mentioned the whole plot. This all takes place in Castle Rock, which was mentioned in Cujo. I believe it was also Dead Zone as well. Mm-hmm. And I think it's mentioned in passing in it as a place near Derry. And I'm sure it probably comes up in other stories. And I think Ace Merrill also popped up in a later King story, but I can't remember much more about it.
He shows up in Needful Things.
Oh, Needful Things. Okay, for some reason I was thinking... Sundog. Is it not? Is it Sundog? I can't remember. There's one in 4:past midnight... where I think maybe another member of his family is mentioned. I could be wrong there. I may be getting that confused with another King.
It could be. Ace Merrill, he works for Mr. Gaunt in Castle Rock and Needful Things.
Yes. Okay. So we get these reflections, and ultimately we also then find out the three 3 of the 4 boys died in various ways, and the most tragic one probably is Chris, who was looking into a promising career, but in the act of trying to make peace between 2 people fighting in a fast food place, he got stabbed in the neck and died. Which triggers all these memories, I think. And this story is the intended to be shown as the trigger for this story. Overall, I think this is a really great read too. It's so hard to, as I've already said, I think this is in many ways a precursor to it, but I don't want to cheapen this story by saying this was the first dry run for it. But they share many, many similar themes. If you read one and enjoy it, I'm sure you'll all read the other and enjoy it. Of course, this one has no supernatural elements at all. This is just based firmly in reality.
It is.
What would you give this one out of 10?
Oh, gosh. I love it. I would give it an 8 or 9 out of 10. If you want to take points off for that thing we talked about with the Chico insert story, you could. I'm not inclined to, but I know what you mean. It does. I think for some readers that might stop the story for a few pages.
Yeah, I'm happily give it a 9. I would be happy to read the version without Chico, and I don't think it would diminish the book whatsoever, because all the points made by that, the insertion of that, and the surrounding comments Goldie makes about that story, I think are covered in the rest of the story. But like you, I don't mind it being there. It's just the first time it was there, I thought it was actually really good. I really liked it. I kind of thought, wow, that shows an insight into this writer. But any subsequent reading, this is probably the 5th time I've read this, maybe 6th. I like it less and less each time, actually.
Yeah. I mean, there's value in that. For those of us who like Stephen King and enjoy recognizing the autobiographical bits that are in there, this is a part of that. I think he's telling something about himself in his journey as a writer through it. But whether it's needful, do we kill the darling, so to speak? Does it need to be in the story, or is it like a spare part that, a vestigial organ that can go?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a fan. Well, I think artists shouldn't revise their own works. I'll say that again. They certainly can revise their own works, but they shouldn't deny the original versions to people.
That's right. Well, right. George Lucas comes to mind.
Yes, indeed. Okay, let's have a break, and then we'll discuss the movie. Stand by.
Fantastic. Thank you.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see, no, I won't be afraid. Oh, I won't be afraid, just as long as you stand by me. So darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me.
Okay, so in this part of the podcast, we're going to be discussing Stand By Me, made in 1986 by Rob Reiner, who I think before this had made Spinal Tap, so he had quite a pair of films there. That's quite impressive.
Very impressive, yeah. And of course, before that, he's just known lovingly as Meathead.
Yes. He's the son of
Carl Reiner.
Yes, that's it.
Carl Reiner, who was, part of the legendary Show of Shows with Sid Caesar, Mel Brooks, all that whole band of comedians.
Indeed. And there's some. I mean, this film isn't a comedy, but it's fun. There's certainly bits of it where it's fun and amusing, and somebody reacts to the kids. are filmed really nicely as comic moments, and some of their discussions also made me laugh as well. It's one thing I noticed was when the film started, it said we're in Castle Rock, Oregon. Which
that's right. Yeah, they switched it. I don't know why. Inexplicably, I don't know why they had to make it Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, it's Oregon. I thought Oregon was on the other side of on the other coast. Is it near Maine, or have I got that wrong?
No, it's on the other side.
It's a bit bizarre. Okay, but they choose to put it in Oregon for some reason. There's just a lot of comedy moments in this that weren't in the original that just made me laugh. For example, Vern talking about he bought a comb. You know, he didn't bring anything else. He bought a comb for this 2-day hike.
And 7 cents.
And 7 cents.
Yeah.
And that always made me laugh. And some of the discussions they have around the campfire also made me laugh. One of the things, I mean, the title, it's a great title change. The Body is people would not have gone seen this film expecting there was certainly, if it had been called The Body, they would have expected something quite different from this. Stand By Me kind of fits.
Yeah. The Body is okay in the book. It's very much a subtitle to many other subtitles and the main title, but The Body, you're going to raise all the wrong expectations, especially where this is a case kind of like with Shawshank, where Stephen King is a brand name that you're playing down so that you can bring, just this wonderful story, emphasize that and bring that to the fore.
Indeed. And this was the first film of King's that isn't a horror, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, Shawshank came eight years later, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the first King book that wasn't a horror that was made into a film. And they certainly didn't ever emphasise Stephen King in the advertising. It's not they're ashamed of it. It's there in the end titles quite clearly, but it's not emphasised in any way. Some of the music, I think, was kind of fantastic.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah. This is like the American songbook of the 60s and 50s here, with you have it's just wonderful. The Chordettes, the Del Vikings, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buddy Holly, and of course the title track by Ben E. King, "Stand By Me,"
which is an amazing track. It's a track I wasn't familiar with until I saw the film The Wanderers. It's used in The Wanderers, quite poignant way. When there's a scene where they discover about the death of JFK, and lovers who have parted come back together, or "Stand By Me" is sort of playing, and I loved it when I heard it in that film, and it works just as well in this film. I think it's a great track.
I don't remember The Wanderers. I may have seen it many years ago, but you naming it, I'm like, I need to rediscover it again.
It's a fun film. It's I know it backwards because, for the simple reason, it was the first VHS movie I ever had. A pre-recorded VHS. So I watched it again and again and again. I think I've probably seen it 30 times, but I haven't watched it in years. But I still know it pretty much backwards. It's also a film with a great soundtrack as well, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of Four Seasons in that one. But
good.
Stand By Me is also...
looks like it was out around the time of The Lords of Flatbush, which is...
Indeed, it was. Film. Yes.
Yeah.
It was around the same time as The Warriors as well. In fact, The Wanderers and The Warriors were often compared. Different films entirely, but they both concern gangs and New York, so, you can kind of see why people compared them. I'll tell you, the use of music in this film reminded me a lot of American Graffiti, actually.
Yes.
That has a great soundtrack and is used really effective.
American Graffiti is really lauded just for its sound design. It's an amazing film and really innovative in its sound design, but with that... and the use of the soundtrack and all the music, really wonderful.
Yeah, and as I say, that when I'd forgotten the soundtrack of this film, it's been a while since I've seen this film, so this rewatch was a real pleasure.
Yes,
And the soundtrack was the biggest surprise on rewatch.
The songs really reinforce a lot of the feeling of the film. So you see the kids playing and horsing around, and it's accompanied by some song, or right in the beginning where they're just singing "I Ran All the Way Home." You know, it's not the soundtrack, but it gives you that slice of of the times. Really good stuff.
Yeah, it was cool. The singing together I thought was really good. Was that from a TV show? The one they were singing about a man and his gun, was it? Or
Yeah, I don't know which TV show that was, to be honest.
I remember. I don't know the show, but I do remember King talking about it in Dance Macabre. There was a show he talked about. Have Gun Will Travel, and
oh, okay, yes.
That might have been. I don't know.
I know of it. I never caught it in syndication. I watched a lot of reruns growing up because I grew up in a world of local channels that were just reruns.
Indeed. In many ways, I mean, the beginning of the film is very similar to the book. There's, in fact, I can't. Apart from some of the sort of little asides, and like, for example, they're sitting in the junkyard discussing things, which they don't do in the book. They cross that junkyard pretty quickly, and they're having their conversations about Annette Funicelli's chest, for example, and stuff like that. It's very similar to the book. Having said that, of the two, the book is a much richer experience. This feels, in my Letterboxd review of this film, I described it as the charcoal sketch of the full painting that is the book, kind of thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It captures the mood really well of the book while being a lot less deep. I mean, it would have been a 3 or 4 hour film if they'd have gone through all the nuances, and I'm not sure you could because a lot of it was internal, but they certainly brought that spirit out in this film, definitely.
Well, a bit like what we said with the Apt Pupil, although I felt the Apt Pupil was more truncated. Here, I feel like you got a pretty high fidelity adaptation.
Yeah.
It's just that, you can't do the mind on film like King can do in a book.
I mean, one thing they certainly did chop out was the Chico story, which I certainly didn't feel was intrinsic to the book anyway,
no.
So that was fine. And it was great to see John Cusack. I think John Cusack as the older brother was great casting.
Yeah, he was really terrific, and they painted it as this really loving relationship. And
he was certainly very considerate towards Gordy in a way the parents weren't. And even when he was alive, Gordy was invisible to them. Basically because Denny was there, but even when Denny was gone, that didn't change anything. They didn't even like him going into his room, which I'm not sure came up in the book, but was certainly in the film.
In the book, they talk about how the room was kind of like a museum, and he'd have to go in there sometimes, and that led to that fear he had that the door would open, he'd see the corpse of his brother saying, "It should have been you, Gordy," and that's what shows up that manifests itself in the Chico story.
Yeah, indeed. As I already mentioned, there was some quite good comedy bits in this. I certainly really like the bit where Chris shows Gordy the gun and Gordy accidentally shoots it, and the expression on the boy's face when the gun goes off, both their faces is kind of priceless. It's really funny. It's
very fun. Well, this is the amazing thing about this film. It is the casting. These kids are really perfectly cast. And I was reading about how Will Wheaton, who played Gordy, felt that they really were cast. They personality-wise, they were very close to the characters they were portraying.
It felt very authentic. It did.
Oh yeah, but just so poised. They feel they just, these young kids are so seasoned and natural. And Corey Feldman. Years ago when I was younger, I didn't appreciate how good Corey Feldman is, but I see him in films like this or Gremlins or other things he did very young, and I'm just so amazed at what he could do.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people in this. I think I read someone say, yeah, he was good in it, but it was just Corey Feldman being Corey Feldman. But Teddy had a lot of personality. And I thought he captured. Obviously, they couldn't show him with like really badly malformed ears. There was a slight malformation on one of his ears, but it's still the same story of how he got it. But I thought Corey Feldman was really good, and it almost feels to me when I watch it that it isn't Corey Feldman playing Corey Feldman. It's the character of Teddy actually informed Corey Feldman's acting persona. It feels like it's the other way around to me. It's almost like him playing Teddy then had a future influence on him. It feels like that's how it feels. It feels that natural. Teddy just him and Teddy just work. You know, it feels realistic. It doesn't feel like he's just being himself.
No, listen. He's a kid who could do crazy. You know, he could do crazy as a note to hit, and that was the Teddy character sometimes. But there was range to the performance. You know, we saw where he breaks down because of the taunting of the junkyard guy, and
indeed, I really like his body language in the breakdown too. It kind of becomes very awkward. And that kind of a kid who's kind of a bit embarrassed about the fact he's crying, it kind of fit for me. I thought it was good.
Yes.
I thought it was very solid. I do like the fact when they were, as we've already talked about them walking along and singing and horsing around, but Lollipop really stood out for me as like the bit that was bonding them. They were just singing along, dancing it, and certainly when Vern and Teddy were coordinated dancing to the song. It was kind of
that's right. Yeah, I caught that too.
Yeah,
where they both do the finger in the mouth pop noise.
Yeah,
really great stuff.
And so they walk along the train tracks, and there's all sorts of different songs playing as they go, and the music's really great. It's really great in this film. I think I'm going to have to get the soundtrack.
Soundtrack is terrific. Yeah, standout for me is the Buddy Holly song "Every Day." The way they bring it across in the film is really wonderful. And if you know anything about Buddy Holly, for me, there's like subliminally, I'm thinking about Buddy Holly who died so young, so tragically, and this is a story about kids who may not escape their circumstances. And then in real life, we've got art imitating life because, we have River Phoenix in this film.
That was tragic, yes. And strangely enough, they changed the story in the film compared to the book. In the book, 3 of the 4 boys die, but in the film, it's only Chris that dies. And as you say, art reflecting life.
Yes.
Which kind of informs the film. But not in a down way. It doesn't make. It is sad, but it kind of. It feels. It doesn't feel good, but it feels right. Let's put it that way.
It does. I think they wisely spare us some misery that where like the decision in Cujo, the ending of Cujo.
Yeah.
I think this was a good choice. I think it was. This is like our discussion about The Mist. At which it came up in the Horror Etc. group the other day again about the ending, and I do think there are things that just cathartically don't feel right.
Yeah.
They, and maybe it's a debate, but I think the filmmakers, I don't think they wimped out. I think they just made a good decision here.
Yeah, there was no reason for the 3 to die. The Gucci business, it works in the book for sure, but it didn't need to be. The one death is plenty. Really.
Yes.
Then we get the section with the train, which is done really nicely, actually. And it's got real tension, even though, if you look at some cuts, the train definitely looks like it's going to hit them. But then they're a little further away from it in the next cut. But that's filmmaking, isn't it? It's still pretty exciting and funny. You're kind of... Once they escape, you're laughing because it's like wow, and that was fun. And again, probably a big bonding exercise if you had to go through something like that. Then they kind of settled down for the night, and Vern specifically says, "I don't want any horror stories," which I'm not sure he said actually use those. I mean, he talks about vampire books in in the book. But in this, he specifically says no horror stories.
Yeah, he doesn't want any of the scary stories, whether it's horror or scary stories.
Yeah.
But they're settling down the woods. So.
And we get a little brief aside of the Lardar story, which is kind of fun and done in a very sort of fairly coarse comedy sort of way. It was fun though. It's fun. So much blueberry pie everywhere.
Exactly.
And this is not a film to eat while you're to watch while you're eating. That's for sure.
Right. That's right. But it's wonderful. It really feels like it's such a simple story, but it feels like something a 12 or 13-year-old kid would make up.
Yeah, and also enjoy it. And in the film, they kind of enjoy it way more than they seem to in the book. They kind of appreciate it a bit more, apart from Vern, who sort of talks a little bit more about it. But it's kind of fun. Then they sit around eating their hamburger, and Vern drops his burger in the fire, and they all have a laugh at him. And then they start talking about the important things, like what exactly is Goofy.
That's right. They keep going around. They have all these burning questions, but Goofy keeps coming up. It's like the interstitial question. Yeah.
It does make me laugh, that last bit where Vern just looks perplexed and says, "Yeah, what is Goofy?" It makes me laugh. And
that's really one of those quotables from this film. You hear that come up. I don't know if you have, but I've heard the whole what is Goofy?
Yeah,
and that all comes from this film.
It's a good question. Then we get a slightly odd sequence, which I don't think is in the book. I was trying to remember if it was or not. I just don't remember. Where Goldie dreams about his father, just looking at him and saying, "It should have been you."
Yes,
which is fairly dark. And it's, to be honest, if I hadn't written it down, I'd specifically written it down, I would have forgotten it. It just is quite a different tone to the rest of the film, but it's so brief, it doesn't pull you out of the film. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. They did not do the. They could have gone darker by having his brother in the closet. His dead brother appearing to him in the closet like we got in the book, but they went with the father at the funeral scene.
Yeah. Yes, it was a funeral, wasn't it? Yes.
Yes.
And then it sort of moves on. They have to go through the sort of swampy area, and that's the sort of grossy bit with the leeches, which again is done really well. The boys are like pulling the leeches off of each other and trying to figure out if they've got any more on them. And we get it's horrific, but it's funny where Gordy realises he's got a big leech down his undies and faints, pulls it out, and there's blood, and he just faints, which again feels authentic, and it's kind of funny. But it's one of these King things. It's straight from the book. It's one of these King things that I don't think if you're a screenwriter you'd ever even think of, but King thinks of these things, and it adds that authentic feel because it's so odd and kind of nothing to do with the story, but also it is a bit to do with the story because it's a trial by ordeal. They're going through this quest, as it were.
Yeah, these linear quests, any one thing might feel just like one more random complication, but they're all like links in the chain of the story.
Yeah.
And but then you take that and you put it with King's writing style, where he's very much led by the muse, and he doesn't know what's going to happen next. These things they just come to him, and he finds a way to make it work in the linear logic of the story. Indeed.
Now, throughout the film, I mentioned this so far, we see the shenanigans of Ace Merrill and his gang, being punks, playing baseball. What is it? Mailbox baseball and things like that.
Yes. They're driving down in the convertible, and they take turns with the bat bashing mailboxes right off of their posts. Really nice.
Yes. Yeah, so they're bashing posts, and they and we see them in pool halls and stuff like that. So we get a sort of feel for that, and I nearly said Keanu Reeves. What am I thinking? Kiefer Sutherland is pretty good as a young punk. This was, I think, a year before Lost Boys. So he's got that kind of menacing vibe, and it kind of. I sometimes wonder when I see things like this: is this like is this how Jack Bauer was when he was like a teen hoodlum? And I think, yeah, probably was actually.
Yeah.
It just turned it to the good, those tendencies. But the boys finally get to the body, don't they? That actually they take a short. I mentioned this. There's a section where they decide to take the shortcut, which leads them to the leeches. But Vern's the sort of less is more troubled about just going through woods and saying, shouldn't we stick to this? And they all just go. And I do like Vern's sort of concerned face. Great acting from that lad. But anyway, they get to the body and we see it. It's much less of a presence. It's not much lingered on, really, is it? We kind of see his face of the dead boy, but there's certainly no hailstorm and howl filling up his eyes or any of that. Slightly more grotesque business.
Yes. Yeah, and we touched on it before that there's just something about how it's brought across in the book that's more effective.
Indeed.
But, we don't need that. We don't necessarily need to linger and be morbid about their discovery of the boy, but there's just some things that, get captured on the page that are different.
Indeed. And I would, anyone who's listened to this, who's seen the film but not read the book, but likes the film, the book is really worth your time. It's definitely worth a read. So Ace Merrill and his crew turn up. In fact, Ace Merrill and Chris's older brother turn up first. And they think it's just the two of them. They say, well, there's four of us. And then as soon as they say that, another five guys turn up. So it's like, and Ace gives them the opportunity to turn around and leave, but they sort of lip off to him. And then we get quite a significant deviation from the book, because it's Gouldy with the gun rather than Chris. Though the dialogue's very similar, they use, you're a cheap dime store whore. What am I saying? Cheap dime store hoodlum, which comes out the book, and also suck my fat one. I think it comes out of the book too. And also, why don't you go home and do your mother or something along those lines?
Yeah, just the worst insults you can hurl at this guy, and he's going to pay for it later. But
indeed,
but the job right there is to let him know that they are deadly serious, they mean business, and they're not afraid to pull the trigger.
Yep, and as I say, it's a switchover in the book. It's Chris again being the salvation of others by being the one that cocks the gun. But in this, it's Gouldy, and it works well. It really does work well. The changeover is, instead of it all being about Chris, it's like Gouldy's. It kind of becomes, it's Gouldy's way of remembering or mourning his brother.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It's it's triggering all of that pent up stuff that's inside about his brother's death. Why wasn't it him? What is his own worth and his worth in his father's estimation?
Yeah,
all of that comes out.
Yeah, and that works better in a film. There's a much cleaner line to why Gouldy's acting that way, isn't there? So it kind of works well, and it's kind of also one boy saving the other boy. What's the saying? One hand washes the other, kind of thing.
Yes.
It's kind of that kind of element to it. And then they basically decide to. I think Chris decides the boy should stay there. It's only right, and it feels right. It feels perfectly correct. And they walk back to town and go their separate ways. In the book, there's much more. After that, Ace Merrill gets his revenge, for example.
Yes.
But in essence, it wraps up really nicely, this, with Richard Dreyfuss acting as the author, who's not a presence in the book, but is a presence in the film. Certainly not a physical presence in the book, obviously, the narrator, but...
he's the narrator and just the frame situation where that he's writing these events.
And we get a really nice tie-up. We see his home life, and he's got his own 12-year-old boy, and they're kind of saying, oh, he always says that.
And you see you just see such a contrast in the conditions and what life was like for him growing up as a kid. And he's a successful author, and he's able to provide a comfortable life for his kids.
Yeah.
and very different experience. You got, you just kind of pick up on that. I think it's there. It's not said, but I think you're meant to pick that up too.
Yeah, and he makes one final observation, does anyone have friends like they did when they were 12 years old? And then the film ends very simply on that great song. What a great film. Really enjoyed it. I could see it wasn't massive budget. There are certain you can see certain bits of it a little fairly low budget, but where they needed to, it looked pretty good. It certainly worked. It definitely worked. I think it was a very lean film, and it didn't have any bagginess about it at all. It took its time where it needed to, but it was not just over 90 minutes, I think. It was really nice and really captured the spirit of the book, I thought.
It really did. I think it's one of the finer adaptions that we've ever seen of King. And it got a lot of acclaim. Got a string of awards. Rob Reiner got a Golden Globe for Best Director. He got the Directors Guild of America Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Motion Pictures. And
it was a really good drama. I mean, he went on to did he direct Misery? Or am I dreaming? Yes,
Reiner
he did.
Reiner did Misery,
which is again another. Well, it is horrific, but it's certainly not supernatural. Another King sort of story. But I mean, he's got a terrific run of. I'm just looking. He's got a terrific run of films. Spinal Tap was first, then it's Sure Thing, which is a fun comedy. Stand By Me, it's a Sure Thing. Obviously, it's got John Cusack in again. Stand By Me, Princess Bride.
Yes.
When Harry Met Sally, and Misery. That is a phenomenal run.
Yeah, they're just big, important films. So good.
There are very few directors that have 6 good films like this. I mean, Sure Thing's probably a bit weaker than the rest, but even so, this is John Carpenter may also have a similar run, and possibly Hitchcock, but and Spielberg actually. But
just big cultural impact. All of them.
I mean, Princess Bride's another phenomenal film. Spinal Tap, one of the great comedies of all time. Amazing run.
Yeah.
And this is as good as any of them as a film, in my opinion. What would you give this one out of 10?
Oh, I give it like an 8 or a 9 again, like I did for the book. It's just very good. I think it's a fine adaptation of King material. I think it's a very important point in the mainstream awareness of King and just all around Hollywood's estimation of how valuable King is as a storyteller, the mass appeal of them. I think this was a real proving ground, this particular film, because it came out, around the time where we were also getting stuff where I like some of this stuff, but they're not good films. Things like Graveyard Shift and things like that were also coming out with King's name on it.
Yeah. Indeed, Cujo and so on and so forth. Indeed. In fact, also this year, 1986, It came out as well, and I think that because in terms of feel, this film feels quite similar to It the book as well. In fact, this story feels so. I got a feeling that people might have gone from Stand By Me to It, and sort of. Got something out of that connection as well.
That's a good insight.
So it was. I think 1986 is pretty much King's year. Maybe it really peaked in terms of what he was doing to the sort of zeitgeist.
Yeah, it really is. This is 10 years from Carrie and De Palma's Carrie. I mean to say, right? Carrie was 76.
76, yeah, it was 76. So it was a hell of a year. Great film. Certainly was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I again would give it an 8 like you. I don't think it's like top tier, but I really enjoy it. I think it's very solid.
At the time, I think I may have seen this on opening night. I know I went out with my friends when I was a teenager to see it, and I had I went having read it a few years earlier, and I really enjoyed it. But I do remember at the time, I remember the buzz about the film and just how the poignance of it. It was just a very powerful example of what it was. Some of that may have faded over time because we've seen other things like it, but it's still just a great film, and I think it's fondly remembered.
It is interesting how, like, Americana sort of suburbs is like seen to be Spielberg's thing, but it does really feel like small town America of the 60s feels like King's thing.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting insight. Both Spielberg and King have a very strong nostalgic streak in them. They can be a bit sentimental for what you're talking about, and I think that's a strength. I think they tap into certain kinds of nostalgia and things that are very relatable from the childhood of the generation that are going out to see those films or read those books.
Yeah, I think Spielberg's probably moved on from that, but I don't think King has. Certainly, I haven't read many of his more recent works, but I've read the one about JFK. What's it called?
I know, I can never remember the date.
22/11/63, yeah. Is it? And it's definitely, for example, he goes back to a time and visits the children of it, the kids of it, after they've faced down Pennywise.
Interesting. I got to get to that one. I have it on my Kindle and I haven't read it yet.
It's a little too long, but it's worth reading. Definitely, it's a good book.
Good. Yeah, I've heard good things.
I've listened to it on audio, and it definitely is quite. It feels baggy, but in a I'll get on. I don't feel like I'll get on with it. It's more like I'd really want to know what happens,
Yeah,
but we're taking so long to get there. But I do appreciate writing.
He can do that sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, I think we'll wind out there. So as I mentioned, no, I didn't mention. Next time I'll be doing the breathing method, which is the fairly short story at the end of different seasons, and then I think you're coming on after that, Anthony, to talk about Christine, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, we're going to do Christine. I'm very excited for Christine.
Yes,
big fan of both Carpenter. This is the Carpenter King fusion, all in one movie.
Yes,
and the timing is good because I finally got my hands on my long coveted Blu-ray version. The DVD was never great. But so I was looking for a better image quality, and I finally got an affordable copy of Christine on Blu-ray. So that's just come out.
Cool. I think I'll be buying that Blu-ray for our review as well. I like Carpenter anyway, and I haven't seen this film since it came out. It's been a long time, but I'm looking forward to seeing it again as well. Okay, I think we'll wind out there. So thanks for coming on, Anthony. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, as always.
Likewise.
And goodbye from me.
Take care, Mark. Thanks again.
Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop.
Boom, 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 boom.
Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop.
Boom, 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 boom.
Oh, my baby lollipop, tell you why. His kiss is sweeter than an apple pie. And when he does his shaky rock and dance, man, I haven't got a chance. I call him lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, lolly, lolly.
boom, boom.